Rifkin, Entropy, A New Worldview, 1980, page 6. Guadeloupe woman found 1812. This is a well-authenticated discovery which has been in the British Museum for over a century. A fully modern human skeleton was found in the French Caribbean island of Guadeloupe, inside an immense slab of limestone dated by modern geologists at 28 million years old. More examples could be cited. Human beings just like those living today, but sometimes larger, have been found in very deep levels of strata. Woohoo! You did tell us that, evolutionist. Gregor Mendel, 1822-1844, 1884, was a creationist who lived and worked near Brno, now Brno, Czechoslovakia. He was a science and math teacher. Unlike the theorist, Mendel was a true scientist. He bred garden peas and studied the results across various varieties. Beginning his work in 1856, he concluded within 8 years. In 1865, he reported his research in the Journal of Brno Society for the Study of Natural Science. The journal was distributed to 120 libraries in Europe, England, and America, yet his research was totally ignored by the scientific community until it was rediscovered in 1900. R.A. Fisher has Mendel's work been rediscovered, and Annals of Science, Volume 1, Number 2, 1936. His experiments clearly showed that one species could not transmute into another one. A genetic barrier existed that could not be bridged. Mendel's work laid the basis for modern genetics, and his discoveries effectively destroyed the basis of species evolution. Michael Pittman, Adam and Evolution, 1984, page 63-64. Louis Pasteur, 1822-1895, was another genuine scientist. In the process of studying fermentation, he performed his famous 1861 experiment in which he disproved the theory of spontaneous generation. Life cannot arise from non-living material. This experiment was very important, for up to that time a majority of scientists believed in spontaneous generation. They thought that if a pile of old clothes were left in a corner, it would breed mice. The proof was that upon later returning to the clothes, mice would frequently be found there. Pasteur concluded from his experiment that only God could create living creatures, but modern evolutionary theory continues to be based on that outdated theory disproved by Pasteur. Spontaneous generation. Life arises from non-life. Why? Because it is the only basis on which evolution could occur. As Adams notes, with spontaneous generation discredited by Pasteur, biologists were left with no theory of the origin of life at all. J. Edison Adams, Plants, An Introduction to Modern Biology, 1967, to page 585. Augustus Frederick Leopold Weizmann, 1834 to 1914, was a German biologist who disproved Lambert's notion of inheritance acquired characteristics. He is primarily remembered as a scientist. Sorry about that. Augustus Frederick Leopold Weizmann, 1834 to 1914, was a German biologist who disproved Lamarck's notion of the inheritance of acquired characteristics. He is primarily remembered as the scientist who cut off the tails of 901 young white mice in 19 successive generations, yet each new generation was born with a full-length tail. The final generation, he reported, had tails as long as those originally measured on the first. Weizmann also carried out other experiments that buttressed his refutation of Lamarckism. His discoveries, along with the fact that circumcision of Jewish males for 4,000 years had not affected the foreskin, kept stretching the necks, so their necks. Yet Lamarckism continues today as the disguised basis of evolutionary biology. For example, evolutionists still teach that giraffes kept stretching their necks to reach higher branches, so their necks became longer. In a later book, Darwin abandoned natural selection as unworkable and returned to Lamarckism as the cause of the never observed change from the species to another. Randall Hett The Secret of the 6th edition, 1984. Here is a brief partial overview of that true scientists were accomplishing in the 18th, 19th centuries. All of them were creationists. Louis Agassiz, 1807-1873, glacial geology. Charles Babbage, 1792. Brewster, 1781-1868, optical mineralogy. Kaleidoscope, George Cuvier, 1769-1837, 32, comparative anatomy, vertebrate paleontology. Sir Humphrey Davy, 1778-1829, thermokinetics. Jean Henry Fabre, 1823-1915, entomology of living insects. Michael Faraday, 1791-1867, electric generator, electric magnetic field theory. Sir John A. Fleming, 1849-1945, electronics, thermic valve. John Henry, 1797-1878, electric motor, galvanometer. Sir William Herschel, 1738-1822, galactic astronomy, double stars. James Joule, 1818-1889, reversible thermodynamics. Lord William Kelvin, 1824-1907, absolute temperature scale, energetics, thermodynamics, transatlantic cable. Johannes Kepler, 1571-1630, celestial mechanics, Amphire's tables, physical astronomy. Carlos Linnaeus, 1707-1778, classification systems, systematic biology. Joseph Listus, 1827-1912, antiseptic surgery. Matthew Murray, 1806-1873, hydrography, oceanography. James C. Maxwell, 1831-1879, electrical dynamics, statistical thermodynamics. George Mendel, 1822-1884, genetics. Samuel B. Morse, 1791-1872, telegraph. Isaac Newton, 1642-1727, calculus, dynamics, law of gravity, reflecting telescopes. Blaise Pascal, 1623-1662, hydrostatistics, barometer. Louis Pasteur, 22-1895, bacteriology, biogenesis, law, pasteurization, vaccination, and immunization. Sir William Ramsay, 1852-1916, inert gases, entropic chemistry. John Ray, 1827-1704, natural history, classification of plants and animals. John Riley, 1842-1919, dimensional analysis, model analysis. Bernard Riemann, 1826, non-Euclidean geometry. Sir James Simpson, 1811-1870, chloroform gynecology. Sir George Stokes, 1819-1903, fluid mechanics. And Rudolf Virchow, 1821-1902, pathology. So what we've seen here is massive, absolute massive creationist scientists doing amazing scientific work. A number of those scientists completely giving us information that completely debunks evolution, and yet the evolutionists continue to go on their merry way, ignoring all these formidable scientists. So now let's go to these evolutionists, and you'll find many of these evolutionists were actually not the kind of scientists that I've just mentioned. They didn't have the same caliber, they didn't have the same ability, who then developed evolution. So let's just look at this. Emanuel Swedenborg in 1688 and 1772 was a do-nothing expert. In his 1734 book Principia, he theorized that a rapidly rotating nebula formed itself into a solar system of sun and planets. He claimed he obtained the idea from spirits during his seance. It is significant that the nebula hypothesis theory originated from such a source. Comte de Buffon, 1707-1788, was a dissolute philosopher who, unable to improve the work of Linnaeus, spent his time criticizing him. He theorized that species originated from one another and that a chunk was torn out of the sun, which became our planet. As with other philosophers, he presented no evidence in support of his theories. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, 1744-1829, made a name for himself by theorizing. He accomplished little else of significance. He laid the foundation of modern evolutionary theory with his concept of inheritance of acquired characteristics, which was later given the name of Lamarckism. In 1809, he published a book, Philosophie zoologique, in which he